Hey everyone, I am John Vincent Chernadal, the first reporter of Group 4, and we're excited to share about the topic Gender and Society, a deeper dive into the Philippines. So this module, Politico-Legal Perspective in Gender and Sexuality, takes a deep dive into the complexities of gender in contemporary Philippine society. It's not just about understanding the meaning of gender, but also exploring the power dynamics, inequalities, and legal frameworks that shape our experiences. So what's inside? This module delves into crucial issues like gender-based violence, exploring the root causes, understanding the different rules of perpetrators, survivors, and victims, and analyzing how laws and policies impact this issue. LGBTQ plus rights, examining the legal and social challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus community, particularly in relation to marriage equality, reproductive health and discrimination, women's rights, analyzing the specific challenges faced by Filipino women, including access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities, social and political participation, understanding how gender influences participation in Philippine society, including the role of women and LGBTQ plus individuals in leadership and decision making. Why this matter? This module is essential because it highlights the importance of challenging gender stereotypes, recognizing that gender is not a fixed category, but a social construct that can be challenged and redefined. Next, promoting equality, advocating for equal rights and opportunities for all individuals regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation. Building a more just society, working towards a society where everyone can live with dignity, respect, and freedom. Get ready to engage. Through this module, you'll gain a deeper understanding of gender dynamics in the Philippines and learn how to be an active participant in creating more just and equitable society. So, let's begin.
Okay, so good morning everyone. My name is John Maipan and I am the second reporter of Group 4. So we're going to start with human rights. So what is human rights? Human rights are the rights and freedoms that we have simply because we exist as humans here in a country by the state. They are inherent, universal, and inalienable and indivisible, interconnected, and interdependent. So the next one is gender-based violence. So gender-based violence, or GBV, is any harmful act that is perpetrated against a person will that is based on gender. It is rooted in gender inequality, the abuse of power, and harmful norms. Gender-based violence covers a wide range of human rights violations against women and girls, including battery and rape, partial rape, any form of sexual violence. So our next topic is all about survivor, victim, and perpetrator. So we're going to start with survivor. What is survivor? Survivor, individual who has experienced violence, abuse, but survived the term emphasizes resilience and agency. So next we have a victim. So what is a victim? a person who has suffered harm due to violence or crime. This term can sometimes imply a more passive role. Our next one is perpetrator. So what is perpetrator to be exact? Perpetrator, an individual who commits acts violence or abuse against others. Perpetrator may act out of desire or out of control, out of power or aggression. So our next topic is all about power. So what is power to be exact? Power is the ability or capacity to influence or control others in the context of gender-based violence. Next one we have violence. So what is violence? Violence is the use of physical force or coercion that will result in injury. Various forms of including physical, sexual, and emotional, and economical abuse. Next one we have the informed consent. So informed consent means that an individual approves or chooses something with full knowledge or the nature of risk, benefits, and consequences of said choices. So next we have the anti-rape law of the RA 8353 and the age of consent. So to be exact, what is anti-rape law in short? The anti-rape law is also known as Anti-Rape Law of 1997 in the Philippines, redefined in the crime of rape and expanded its scope. It is eliminated by requirement of physical resistance and by the victim and included new norms of sexual violence, such as rape committed by a spouse. As for the age of consent, in the Philippines, it was historically set as 12 years old. However, law passed in 2022 raised the age of consent to 16 years, aiming to protect the minors from sexual exploitation and abuse. Next, we have the statutory rape. Statutory rape refers to sexual relation involving a person below the legal age of sexual consent. So what is statutory rape to be exact? Statutory rape refers to sexual activity which one participant is below the legal age of consent, and then rendering the act illegal regardless of whether the minor gave appearance consent. Next one we have women, the law and women's issues development. In 1987, Philippines Constitution, the fundamental law of the Philippines, established following ousting of Ferdinand Marcos in 1986. It serves as the framework of the government and guarantees the rights of citizens. So next, we have the protection of women senior citizens, laws promoting gender equality. So several laws in the Philippines promote gender equality and protect women's rights. Key legislation includes the Charter of Women RA 9710. And next, we have the practical approaches to the development of a woman. So what are these? So first one, we have the education and training. So this provides access to quality education and vocational training to enhance skills and employability. Second one, we have the economic empowerment. So this supports women's own business through microfinances and entrepreneurship programs and access to markets.
So class, the Family Code of the Philippines is basically the set of laws that talks about marriage, family relationships, and property matters between couples. It defines marriage in Article 1 as a special contract of permanent union between a man and a woman. What's important to note here is that marriage according to the law is only between a man and a woman. This means that under this law, people from the LGBTQ community like same-sex couples are not allowed to marry legally. They don't get the same legal benefits or right that straight couples do, such as inheritance, spousal support, or the ability to adopt kids together. This already shows inequality because the law isn't considering all types of relationships. It's stuck with the idea that only a man and a woman can form a family, leaving out the LGBTQ couples who also want to enjoy the same legal protections. Specific gender inequalities in the Family Code. Now, aside from LGBTQ exclusion, there are some parts of the Family Code that seem to favor man over woman, which raises issues about gender inequality. Let's go over a few examples. Number 1, parental consent before marriage. According to Article 14, if someone is between 18 and 21 years old and not yet married before, they need to get parental consent before they can marry. The law says they can get this consent from their father, mother, or guardian. But the father is mentioned first in the order. Now you might think that doesn't seem like a big deal, but even the small details like this show how the law still put the fathers first. It implies the father's opinion is more important when giving consent for the marriage. Number 2. Conjugal partnership and community property. According to Article 96 and Article 124, this one's interesting. When a couple is married, they usually have community property, which means both the husband and wife share ownership of their assets. According to these articles, both spouses are supposed to jointly manage and enjoy their shared property. Sounds fair, right? But here's where the problem comes in. If they disagree about what to do with their property, the husband's decision wins. The wife can only go to court to challenge it, and even then, she only has 5 years to do so. Number 3. Parental authority and legal guardianship. According to Article 211 and Article 225, when it comes to raising their children or managing the kids properly, the father and mother are supposed to have equal say. However, just like with property matters, if they disagree, the father's decisions wins unless there's a court order saying otherwise. Let's say a couple disagrees on which school to send their child to. By default, the law says the father's choice will prevail unless the wife takes legal action. Again, this favors the male parent over the female one in important family decisions. In short, the family code has some provisions that seem to favor men over women, especially when it comes to making important decisions in marriage. It shows that despite both partners supposedly having equal rights, the husband's opinion often carries more weight in the disagreements. This kind of legal setup definitely shows gender inequality, as the law gives more power to the husband, both in property and child-related matters. It also includes LGBTQ couples entirely from the institution of marriage, leaving them without the rights that heterosexual couples have. Adultery and concubinage. Adultery and concubinage are both crimes related to marital infidelity, but they treat man and woman quite differently, reflecting gender inequality in the law. Adultery involves a wife having sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband. This alone is enough to charge her with a crime. In contrast, concubinage applies to the husband, but the conditions are more specific. A husband commits concubinage if he has sexual intercourse with another woman under scandalous circumstances, meaning it's done in a way that public or shameful. Also, when keeping another woman in their conjugal home and lives with another woman in a separate residence. The key difference here is that adultery doesn't require any public scandal to be considered a crime. Just the act of sex outside the marriage is enough. But for concubinage, the affair must meet certain conditions to be considered illegal. Additionally, the penalties are harsher for women involved in adultery than for men involved in concubinage. A wife can be imprisoned for adultery, but a husband found guilty of concubinage may only be banished from the home, showing a clear disparity in how marital infidelity is treated based on gender. Issues with the Anti-Rape Law, or Republic Act 8353. The anti-rape law in the Philippines, while meant to protect individuals from sexual violence, has certain provisions that can actually perpetuate abuse. One problematic part of the law states that if a rapist marries their victim after committing the crime, it will extinguish the criminal charges or penalties. This means that by simply getting married, the rapist can avoid any punishment for their actions. Another concerning provisions allows a husband to escape criminal action for rape if the wife forgives him after a crime. These provisions are harmful because they allow perpetrators to use marriage as an excuse to escape legal consequences, effectively giving them a free pass to continued abuse. This is why there are current efforts to repeal these parts of the law, as they fail to truly protect survivors and instead create more risk for them. Care work. This can include paid work like nursing or social services, but also unpaid work like domestic chores and child rearing. This imbalance highlights a major gender inequality in the division of labor, as women are expected to handle most of the household responsibilities without financial reward. Meanwhile, men typically take on fewer of these tasks even in dual-income households. This unequal distribution of unpaid care work limits women's economic opportunities and reinforces traditional gender roles, showing that gender inequality is still deeply embedded in both paid and unpaid work systems. Understanding sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is basically any kind of unwelcome behavior that is sexual in nature and makes the recipient uncomfortable, offended, or humiliated. Just like other forms of abuse, sexual harassment isn't really about sex itself. It's about power, control, and dominance. It's when someone feels entitled to say or do something sexual to someone else without their permission. This is important to remember because harassment is often more about showing power over someone rather than just attraction. The tripartite model of sexual harassment. The tripartite model of sexual harassment by Fitzgerald and colleagues, 1997, breaks down the harassment into 3 parts. First, gender harassment. Sexual behaviors that insult or degrade someone because of their gender identity, or sexual orientation. Second, unwanted sexual attention. This one is more about giving someone sexual attention that they don't want. It can be things like making comments about someone's body, catcalling, or even spreading sexual rumors about them. Number 3, sexual coercion. This is the most extreme form and is often referred to as quid pro quo. sexual harassment. It happens when someone with power demands sexual favors in exchange for something, like a promotion or a raise or even keeping a job. It's about using power to force someone into sexual acts. Alright class, now let's talk about Philippine legislation against sexual harassment. We have two key laws that aim to tackle sexual harassment in the Philippines: the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995 and the more recent Safe Spaces Act or Bawal Bastos. So, RA 7877 or Republic Act 7877, Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, is limited to sexual harassment in the workplace, schools, or training environments. It targets those in position of authority who use their power to demand sexual favors. Next, Republic Act 11313 or Safe Spaces Act covers all public spaces, streets, schools, malls, and online platforms. It deals with a wider range of behaviors like catcalling, online harassment, and public indecency. Who can be charged? Under RA 7877, only people who have influence or authority over the victim, like employers or professors, can be charged. Meanwhile, in RA 11313 allows anyone to be charged if they engage in harassing behavior, whether it's a random person on the street or someone online. And for the last part of my report, theoretical perspective of sexual harassment. According to Byrne in 2019, he discusses multiple theoretical perspectives on sexual harassment. The biological evolutionary perspective posits that males' innate drive to mate and reproduce leads to harassments of females. Although this view lacks empirical support, the socio-cultural gender perspectives suggest that societal gender norms, male dominance, and cultural acceptance of violence against women contribute to sexual harassment. The vulnerable victim hypothesis proposes that individuals with low socio-economic and organizational power are at greater risk of harassment. The power threat model argues that harassment perpetuates heterosexual male dominance by intimidating women and sexual minorities. The social power theory suggests that harassers leverage various forms of power to justify their actions. Additionally, the people or the person by situation and perspectives considers situational and personal factors such as organizational tolerance and hostile attitudes. In predicting sexual harassment, these theories provide insights into the complex dynamics underlying acts of sexual harassment.